So a couple weeks ago, I was talking to Martin at Open5th about a permissions bug that I don't even remember which permissions bug, but one I had been testing. And we started talking about that it would be great if we had an idea, like a spec that we could have for a permissions overhaul, because that's been kind of something that's been talked about for a long time in the community to do at Hackfest / finish at Hackfest, because some of it's we're gonna want some of it done before then. And so this was just kind of the list of the things that we talked about wanting to see and looking at some of the old existing bugs about what people ask about. One of the biggest things we see is more granular permissions. You know, some things you can do really granular, some are just like, can use the ILL module. And so trying to add more granularity. Role-based to make it easier to like assign batches of roles or batch permissions to a bunch of people at the same time. We have a plugin that we use. It works really well, but it's also kind of clunky. So we also talked about being able to do default roles or multiple roles that like the most permissive would win. So you could do, you know, this role can edit items but can't delete them, but this one can delete them, and if you had both, you'd be able to delete them. And also being able to set it more granularly at a patron level, so if they were like, well, this role works for everything, but we want them to have one extra thing, being able to go in and change that and set that. Also making it easier to add plugin permissions, because Martin just did that for a plugin that he was working on, and it really is a lot of like back-end stuff to define which borrowers can do it and block it separately. So like having a mechanism that we could add permissions per plugin, or like a plugin could add a permission about being used, or like can configure versus can use it. Login was on there, but that's, I think, ready for test. I think it's in testing right now, permission login. I don't remember. I feel like it was signed off and maybe had to go back to get a little bit of follow-up, but another big thing is assigning roles based on SSO attributes, because right now you can really only set like one set of permissions, if any, based on SSO. You can't say like, I want this partner that, or this patron that has, you know, X Google role or tag to have these permissions. It's just like, these permissions or no permissions. Those are the options. And we were thinking, and this example is kind of what we'd like to see for pretty much everything in the long run, because there are like 20 bugs that are all, we need more granular permissions for specific thing. And when they say more granular permissions, usually they mean the ability to view, edit, delete, add, all of that separately, as well as a scope like my library group, and all libraries, which would be the default. And there are some permissions that have that now, but it's a little bit clunky and not everything has it. And so especially like big consortia, we get a lot of questions about that. And so this is kind of like an example. I didn't do add on there, but that should also be probably its own separate thing. This is a hedge doc that I'm going to put in the Mattermost after this is done. I just kind of wanted to go over it first. And then, so we have kind of a to-do list. Some of it is bugs that exist. All of them except this one came out of 20813. These were all comments from the last time it failed QA about like the pieces that needed to happen to move forward. And so it's not necessarily going to be like exactly this, but just making sure that we have all of that covered. We'd also like reporting to be easier, because with the current like flags bits system, it can be really hard to report on like who has which permissions, unless you go through and do like a lot of casing in the SQL. So, and we'd need to create an interface for editing roles in admin, that like the admin section, updating all the permission checks to check the correct structure or the new structure. and updating all the permission checks to use scope, if there's a scope now, and possibly add a group flag for if it should be used for permissions, because people use groups for different things, and so it would probably be a smart idea to be able to say, these are the ones that matter for the permissions. Martin also really would love proper OAuth permissions, where you can have it pop up and say, which permission are you granting this app for if you're doing like API stuff with a login. And a couple of examples we had were readers list, where that's something that Martin had worked with before in permissions, and then our permissions plugin. And so if you have concerns or other ideas or things that are like, oh, we definitely need to do this, come talk to me during Hackfest and we can hash it out. And also I'm going to put it on the Mattermost so you can edit it, put comments on, etc. That's it.